earliest memories of service, which was with my family. I have two brothers, a sister. My mom and my dad and I all went to this big warehouse, and I must have been 12 or 13 years old, and it was Brother Beano's sock drive. And I don't even know how they got connected, but we spent a couple of hours in this very cold warehouse sorting socks. The dark ones go in this pile, the white ones go in this pile. And at the end, my mom, I remember her telling me that these socks went to people who otherwise couldn't or didn't have the means to have socks. And so I knew that we had done something good for people, and I had this kind of warm fuzzy about doing something nice in the world. But it wasn't until I got to college that that service early on in my life really hit home. And one of the programs I was involved with was called Project Open Hand. And so we would travel from the South Bay area up to the city of San Francisco, and we would spend Friday afternoons delivering meals to people who had terminal illnesses, largely HIV and AIDS patients, who were mostly independent, living on their own. But we walked around the Tenderloin district, one of the poorest and most violent areas in that city. And it wasn't so much the food that we delivered as it was the companionship. Really getting to sit with these people who didn't have many other people to talk with them, make them feel like they were connected to community, who were so isolated. And I found through my weeks and months of doing that service that the relationship was really what mattered. The meal was just opening the door. The socks were just a beginning of a whole story of what it means to be in relationship with people who are on the margins. And I found that it's opened up my understanding of myself, my understanding of the world, and my understanding of who God is and who God invites me to be with.
So I think for me, one of the most meaningful moments or encounters with someone while doing service was at Interfaith Shelter last fall, which I feel privileged to get to help coordinate. And I met there this family, a mom, a dad, and 3 children, who were 13, 8, and 3. And I think the first thing that meeting this family did for me was really transform my perceptions of the homeless and who is homeless and how they're homeless. I had never met an entire family, despite volunteering for years with the homeless, who were really struggling together and supporting each other in that. And particularly, I was really struck by the 13-year-old, Desi. She was starting high school as a freshman, and during the week we were there, she had soccer tryouts all week. And I just remember thinking how hard, in many ways, it was for me to be a freshman in college, and the awkwardness, and am I going to fit in, and who am I going to meet, and what's that going to be like? And I thought, wow, as she's continuing that journey that all of us went through of adjusting to a new school and soccer tryouts, she's also living out of this shelter and really every day going to school holding that secret in for herself. What does it mean to be homeless and be 13 years old and starting high school? And I think I saw in her such strength, such vulnerability, such honesty, and that she was able to have conversations with college students about some of those things, was able to talk about the struggles of being a freshman, of being at a new school, but also being homeless, and what that's like. And from her, I saw this strength in vulnerability, and the strength that really can come from being willing to share your story and open up to people that you just met. And so I think from her, I learned that resiliency and that ability. I felt challenged in my own life. How can I be honest and vulnerable with people, people that I maybe don't know that well, in order to really connect? So I think about Desi often, and I wonder where she and her family are. And I hear that they did get into permanent housing, and so I wonder what her high school experience is like now.
guess for me, one moment of service that really stands out was when I was in Juke. I was really close to a senior there in high school. His name was Glenn, and Glenn is this awesome, crazy, wonderful musician, really super talented, but also like a really rash, emotional person. And one day there was a group of students out playing volleyball, and a car ran over the volleyball, and Glenn's sister, his promised sister, which is really important in the culture there, was really offended by one of the gentlemen driving the car, and so Glenn had a pretty extreme reaction to this and went out to start a fight. And I basically just kind of interrupted him and followed him around school for a good 45 minutes, kind of goofing around with him and, hugging him and being like, Glenn, I'm not going to let you go until I know that, everything is kind of settled, because one big mistake there and you can wind up in prison pretty easily and really kind of mess up your life. And so I guess for me that was an act of service, because it was just a time and an opportunity to be present to the situation and what Glenn's needs were. It was a really surprising moment for me, not something I anticipated happening on that particular day, but a really humbling one, in that I was just able to meet him where he was at. And so service comes in a variety of ways, and for me that particular day was just being present to Glenn's emotions.
Most recently, last year during a day trip, we were visiting Casa Las Memorias, which is a HIV hospice for those in Tijuana. I was in the intensive care unit just talking to someone, forget his name, but big Charger fan, and so we were chatting about football. He just had surgery in his spinal cord and was going through physical therapy. He hadn't walked in about 6 months. And so in the midst of our conversation, this therapist came, and somehow in the mixture of Spanish, I was brought into helping him in his physical therapy. We were walking back and forth in one of the hallways, and my job was to support his weight as he was slowly taking each step. And so in that moment, I realized, looking back, how much God was leading me in that. It wasn't me, but God was taking what I could offer, my body, my strength, whatever it may be, and just that intimate relationship with this man that I hadn't met till that day, but I was able to share with him in his rehabilitation, his struggle. And so that moment brought me back to when Jesus is walking with his cross on Calvary. And Simon is called to carry that cross with him, and that powerful exchange between the two. So that moment, just realizing what is service about. It's about relationship. It's about leaning on each other, our strengths, our weaknesses, and how each can benefit from the other. And that God has a hand in all that. That God puts us into those moments where we can offer ourselves in whatever way we can, but it's really God that drives us.
I think two specific moments come to mind when I think about moments of transformation in my own life in regards to service. And they actually don't come when I'm serving someone else, but allowing the grace and wisdom to also be served. And the first one came when I was a junior in college. I went on a retreat called the Search Retreat. And it was a moment of grace where I had no choice but to let people serve me in that moment, and to let God's love wash over me through my community and those around me. And fast forward to today, when I was pregnant with Dominic, I got prescribed 4 months of bed rest. And it meant that I wasn't able to get out of bed for anything except for to go to the restroom. And so I had no choice again but to let my loved ones, my community, serve me. I had no choice but to let them love me. They were the ones that brought me food. They were the ones that came to visit me so that I wouldn't be alone. And that moment of search came back to me as this reminder that as much as we have hearts and passions for service to others, to those in our community, that we also have to accept service from others and accept others to love us as God loves us.